I think the common misconception about addicts is that they're people who are strung out and are living on the street and who can't get up and go to work. And they're people who grew up in bad families. And those things aren't true because I was an addict. I grew up in a Christian home, a loving home with two exceptional parents. I was raised in church, brought up in Sunday school and in youth group. And ever since I was a little girl, I knew who God was. I achieved everything that I thought that I wanted. But my heart still felt really empty, and I still felt this void. And so when I got into high school, I started doing drugs. My freshman year, I was 14, the first time I got high. And it was after youth group one night. And that led to about 7 years of me using drugs and just being in a very dark place. So in college, my freshman year, I was going out with my girlfriends on a Friday night like we usually did. And we drank, and we got stoned, and we did a lot of painkillers. And the next thing I knew, I woke up in my dorm room 2 days later, not knowing how I got there, not wearing the same clothes I went out in when we went out, and I was covered in bruises. And I remember sitting on the couch in my dorm room and thinking, I don't want to live my life this way. But then one of my friends called, and he came over, and we got stoned. And I quit worrying about things. It was so much easier just to be comfortable instead of dealing with the hurt that was inside of me and that void that was inside of me. I was sitting in a hospital room watching one of my friends die with his parents. Here was somebody that was my age that was dying right before my very eyes because of alcohol. And I walked outside and I called my mom, and I started crying, and I said, Mom, I'm really scared and I'm really overwhelmed and I don't know what to do. And she said to me, Jenny, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm so sorry for these things that are happening to you. But baby, I'm so glad it's not you, because next time it's probably going to be you if you don't change your lifestyle. So I went home, and I opened my Bible, and I started to pray. I found the verse in my Bible, and it was in Matthew, and it talked about how all ye who are weary and burdened, come to me, and I will give you rest. And I remember thinking that that was me, that I was so tired, and that I couldn't manage my life on my own, and that I was drowning in addictions. And so I prayed to God to help me, to help save me. And I started on my road to sobriety, on my road to recovery, and it was a very slow process. And then about 6 months after that, I got invited to go to Africa. I saw people who had no worldly possessions, but who were so joyful as they spoke about their God and their Jesus and their faith. And I saw children who were dying of AIDS, and I held them in my arms. And I realized that God had a plan for me that was bigger than just being a junkie. And I wanted to know Him more, and I wanted to follow Him. And I gave my life to Christ on that trip to Africa. And I got a job at Christ United Methodist Church, and I really loved what I did, and I got to come to work every day and try to help people. One day last year, a person in our congregation, in our community of believers, died an alcohol-related death. And we had a counselor who was friends with that person come in to talk to the staff. And they kind of asked us, what are we doing to help people in our community and in our congregation who are struggling? And I just remember sitting there in that meeting and thinking, this whole time I've been covering up who I really was because I was ashamed. And God just really spoke to me that moment and said, you need to stand up and tell these people about your life. And so I did. I told everybody in the staff meeting about my struggles with addiction and how I really thought that we needed to help people in our congregation who were suffering from the same things that I had been. And I walked back to my office after the meeting, and I sat down, and I started thinking, I started panicking, actually. There's no way that people are going to forgive me or love me when they know all the ugliness and all the shame behind my past. And one by one, everybody who was on staff and who had been in that meeting came into my office and hugged me and told me that they loved me and told me that it didn't matter what my past was, and told me that they could see joy in my heart because of God. And it wasn't until that moment that I really understood God's grace, and that I really understood the importance of living in community with other believers. It says in Ephesians that God takes our transgressions and He washes them clean, and only by the grace of God are we saved. And so from then on, I started looking into recovery programs to help other people in our congregation and in our community who are suffering, because I wanted people to see that no matter how far down you get, no matter how dark things are in your life, that God has grace to cover you, and that His grace covered me and covered all my sins, and that I shouldn't be ashamed of my past because it created in me who I am today. And God took all those things, and miraculously, I'm sitting here in front of you, a person who believes, a person who gets to come to work every day and work in ministry and help people and be surrounded by people that I love and that love me. My name is Jenny Mislin. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ who has struggled with drug and alcohol.